Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, I want to take a look and really expand on this article that was written by Nick Shook. Now, we've talked about Nick Shook a lot here on the channel throughout this year. He did the quarterback index. Article series that we talked about a lot here on the channel. Baker Mayfield was in the 10 to 15 range throughout pretty much the entirety of the season. But Nick Shook previewed the NFL offseason quarterback market, in which teams need a new arm in 2024 and who will possibly be on the move. And I decided to sit here and think about this and raise the question of, how does this affect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? What are their options at quarterback this off season? So we're going to dive into that in this video today. To start off, yes, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could draft a quarterback. You're looking at Michael Penix, you're looking at JJ McCarthy. I talked about that in the Daniel Jeremiah mock draft video. Those are the options for the Bucs at quarterback. And we're going to be talking about those guys a lot, but just keep in mind, yes, those guys are options, of course, and they could take a quarterback in the later rounds. Yes, they could do that also. Again, we will dive into those guys when we need to dive into them. But firstly, a guy I want to talk about is Kyle Trask real quick. He is technically, I believe, the only quarterback under contract right now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this upcoming offseason. Maybe John Wolford is as well. I don't remember how those types of practice squad contracts work and whatnot, so maybe Wolford is also under contract, but point being is that Trask and Wolford would be there as well. They're technically options, and I like both of those guys. Just putting it out there that if Baker had some crazy contract number, that you do have those two guys as options on the roster. Also, talking about Baker Mayfield real quick, I still, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that he will be back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at whatever number that may be. I think that in the next month and a half to 2 months, I will be making a video about Baker Mayfield re-signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How much money is that going to be for? How many years is that going to be? I don't know. There's still a lot to hash out with the Bucs and with Baker, but I've made multiple videos talking about how Baker wants to be back, the Bucs want him back, and I think that a deal will get done at the end of the day. But what if it is a situation where the contract negotiations go south and a team is willing to pay Baker a boatload of money? Let's say $40 million a year. Something along those lines. I mean, Baker would very well want to possibly take a deal like that. If a team like the Las Vegas Raiders, or if a team like the Seattle Seahawks, or one of these teams like the New England Patriots possibly, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that needs a quarterback, saw the year that Baker had and said, whoa, that's pretty good. We need some Baker on our team. Maybe the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know. What would the Buccaneers do in that type of situation, in that scenario? Well, obviously, drafting a quarterback, again, we are sailing on that ship. Taking a quarterback in the first round would heavily be considered. But going past these teams that are going to be looking for a new arm, I want to talk about some guys that are possibly going to be available. And I also have Spot Track up as well. We're going to be pulling that up to take a look at, some of the free agents that are going to be available in the league. And I guess that's actually a better way. But one thing to talk about is the Justin Fields trade. Is that a thing that the Buccaneers may consider? If you want me to be completely honest, I think that Justin Fields in this Dave Canales offense, based on what I saw them be able to do with Baker Mayfield this year, I think Justin Fields could eat. I really do. I think that he could have a heck of a career revival. He is so young. So young. And you want to talk about a guy that could be a potential franchise quarterback for your football team. A lot of people may look to Justin Fields. He's only 24 years old. He has shown a lot of good ability. 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions in 2023. 2,500 passing yards playing in 13 games. 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions in 2022. Not a terrible touchdown to interception ratio, in my opinion. I think that this would heavily improve in Dave Canales' offense that is very catered to quarterbacks making just really good timing throws and whatnot, and not putting a lot of pressure on your QB. Of course, the big thing with Fields is his running ability. If we can take a look at that, he had 1,000 rushing yards in year 2. He had 420 rushing yards in year 3 and 657 rushing yards in year 3. 420 rushing yards in year 1. 12 rushing touchdowns the past 2 years. That would add such an interesting dynamic that, look, I'm being honest, if Baker Mayfield would not come back or could not come back, I'd heavily consider a trade for Justin Fields. I would, man. I would give up a second round draft pick for Justin Fields. And I've been very down on Justin Fields. I was heavily down. But that's, whenever I look at it contextually, Dave Canales, I feel like, could do a lot with Justin Fields. I really do believe that. And if you couldn't bring back Baker and you wanted to bring in a new guy who could legit be your franchise quarterback, because you're not going to be in a situation where you're going to be able to draft a quarterback high like a Caleb Williams or a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels. Justin Fields, I think, would be a heck of a forward-thinking trade by Jason Light at number 11 overall. And buddy, I think that Fields could cook in a Dave Canales offense. I really do believe that. Taking a look at some of the other options that are there, though, and Justin Fields, I think he is probably going to... I wouldn't trade him if I was the Bears. I would look to build around him and probably get a pretty good offensive coordinator in or just really work with Justin Fields and see what he could do. But some other guys, Russell Wilson is in there. He's a guy that a lot of people have been talking about. He's a guy that obviously has worked with Dave Canales for so long, because Dave Canales was with Pete Carroll the entirety of Russell Wilson's career in Seattle, and that led to a lot of success. That led to, let me go ahead and scroll up here, that led to a Super Bowl win. That led to a 2020 Walter Payton Man of the Year award. That led to 9 Pro Bowls. Now, I will say age is a concern. 35 years old. Russell Wilson is a guy that you're not going to have for a long time. 3 years, I think, is around the max. Very similar to what Tom Brady was, but Russell Wilson, is coming off of a disappointing 3-year stretch where he did put up good stats, by the way, in 2021. 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,100 passing yards. He had a terrible 2022 with Hackenberg. Is that his name? Not Hackenberg. Nathaniel Hackett. I think that dude's just a bad play caller, and that very much was detrimental to Russell Wilson and what he could do. 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions was not good, but then you saw him bounce back under Sean Payton. As much as I don't like the guy, a real offensive play caller, one of the best in the league, in my opinion. 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and 3,000 yards, very similar to what his final year in Seattle was. You see the similarities, you see the comparisons that are made there. It's literally basically the same exact stats, just 47 more passes from Russell Wilson in 2023. He was unceremoniously benched in the final 2 games, which I thought was a scumbag move by Sean Payton and the Broncos, but it's Sean Payton. What do you expect? And I think that Russell Wilson proved he's still got a little bit of gas in the tank. The thing that worries me is the age. 35. I mean, people are iffy about Baker coming back because he's 28 years old. That's 35, man. That is 7 more years that you're dealing with. 7 years older. For a guy that might be around for 3 more years, that is he cooked, is he not cooked? We don't really know the answer to that yet. Would he have fantastic chemistry with Dave Canales, who would know all the entireties of the in and outs of Russell Wilson's game? Yes. I just think if this was a couple years ago, I think that it would be heavily considered. It's not now, man. I think he's a little bit too old, and I just think the Buccaneers would maybe look at a younger, different direction rather than just wanting to continuously cycle through a ton of lot older veteran options. Now, I say that to say this. I think the exception, and I'm so biased because this guy's probably in the top 5 favorite players in the league for me, would be Kirk Cousins. Yes, he is coming off of a torn Achilles injury, and that sucks, and that's not fun at all. But difference here with Russell Wilson is before he got hurt, Kirk Cousins was literally playing like the MVP of the league. Yes, he only had a 4-4 record, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 2,331 yards. Are you kidding me? That's phenomenal. You give him an offense that isn't going to put a lot of pressure on him in a Dave Canales offense. You give him Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I'm not joking. I could see him taking the Bucs to an NFC championship game. Maybe if things really go your way and he's able to stay healthy, maybe even a Super Bowl. I don't know. I really, people are going to clown me. I really do have that much faith in Kirk Cousins. I do. I think that you've seen so much good from him. Look at his Minnesota stats, bro. 171 touchdowns, 55 interceptions, 23,000 passing yards in 6 years. That's awesome. I mean, that is an awesome stretch of play. He's averaging 4,400 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, and 11 picks a year. Uh, Give me all of that. That is awesome. And I think that it would result in a lot of wins for the Bucs, and I feel like that they would benefit heavily. And I do feel like he'd be a great fit for a Dave Canales scheme. And where I see the difference between a 35-year-old Kirk Cousins and a 35-year-old Russell Wilson is Kirk still showing that he can sling it at a high level, whereas I'm not as sure with Russell Wilson. A few other names to consider here. Sam Howell, he's an interesting guy who is somebody that is young, right? Is somebody that may be moved on from because Washington is going to be in a situation where they can get a new quarterback. Sam Howell was a former 5th-round draft pick. He had 21 touchdowns to 21 interceptions, 612. He led the league in passing attempts. I don't love the turnovers, and I don't necessarily think that Sam Howell is a guy that would be able to do super well in the Bucs system. He would have some great weapons around him, but he had some really good weapons in Washington as well. 21 interceptions is bad. Whether or not you want to say that's his fault or not his fault is, subjective in my opinion. But the Bucs have already had quarterbacks who, threw as many interceptions as they did touchdowns, and they didn't bring those guys back or that guy back. So to say that they would go and try that type of thing again, I don't see it. I don't. Desmond Ridder, I don't think the Buccaneers would be interested. He is a guy that has shown some flashes, but again, I just don't necessarily think is a guy that you would consider a long-term answer, or in my opinion, at this point, even a high-level starter. Again, much like the Sam Howell theory, 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. No, not necessarily somebody that I think the Bucs would be interested in. Jimmy Garoppolo is interesting. I think that he is in a very dangerous situation to where a lot of people are starting to view him more and more as just a good backup option. Essentially what happened, the past couple of years. I mean, and look, he still put up some good stats in 2022. 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 2,400 passing yards. The year with Las Vegas, do you blame Josh McDaniels? I don't know. 7 touchdowns, 9 picks. He was benched for Aiden O'Connell, a 4th-round pick. And he was also a little bit dinged up. Injuries are a big concern for Jimmy Garoppolo. That is one thing that would really keep me away from Jimmy G. When he is fully healthy, he can take you to a Super Bowl like he did in 2019 with the 49ers. And I think that the 49ers offense is very similar to what the Buccaneers offense wants to do. But injuries are a big thing. And have they worn down Garoppolo to the point, and also multiple benchings, wear it down to the point where you just view him as a backup quarterback. A nice backup quarterback, don't get me wrong, maybe even a fringe starter, but a backup quarterback nonetheless. That's kind of the thoughts and opinions. And speaking of guys in that boat, Ryan Tannehill is in that boat as well. Now, I will say, I would have a bit more confidence in Ryan Tannehill than I would in Jimmy Garoppolo, just because the injuries haven't been as much there with Ryan Tannehill, and he has been able to showcase an ability to stay healthy. But it's just, again, a guy's 35 years old. He's been benched multiple times now, a couple seasons in a row. 13 touchdowns, 6 picks, 4 touchdowns, 7 picks. It seems like Tannehill's time as a full-time starter is done. Had a heck of a run there with Tennessee. A couple of AFC championship games with Vrabel. But, 5 good years in Tennessee is great. But it seems like he's more of a backup now for the last couple years of his career. Joshua Dobbs, I love Joshua Dobbs. I think that he is a beast, but he's a guy that you don't really view as a long-term starter. He's a guy that you don't really view as a fix-it kind of guy, or even an upgrade over Baker Mayfield. I think that great backup, the Pastronaut, right? Great backup, solid guy who can come in and really help you out in a pinch. I thought he had a fun year, 13 touchdowns, 10 picks, 2,400 passing yards. He's going to be a fun journeyman backup. I think he's going to be very similar to like a Josh Johnson. I think he's earned that, but, not necessarily a starting caliber guy. Real quick, out of all these guys, by the way, who I view as starters, Kirk, I think you could view as a starter. I think that Russell Wilson you could view as a starter. I think Justin Fields you could view as a starter. Everybody else, not necessarily viewing it at that point. Maybe Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell could be in that conversation, but not Ridder. Not Jimmy G at this point. Not Ryan Tannehill at this point. Not Dobbs at this point. Not Tyrod Taylor at this point, although he'd be a fine backup for some teams. You then have a couple of interesting young guns here and this is going to be the last 2 guys that we talk about. Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. Now, if the Bucs really wanted to experiment, I mean really wanted to experiment, I wonder if one of these guys is cut. I wonder if the Bucs would bring him in as maybe like a third quarterback. I don't know. Maybe that's me just giving wishful thinking. But Zach Wilson, brother, he has not looked great in New York. I mean, he's not. 23 touchdowns, 25 interceptions in 3 years, benched multiple times. Is everything Zach Wilson's fault? No, but he had a lot of weapons this year, and things still stunk. And the offensive line was really bad for New York. Really bad. But I just don't think Zach Wilson is the answer for a lot of teams right now. I don't think he's the long-term guy for the Jets. I don't think he would be a potential long-term guy for the Bucs, even if you want to give him a couple of years behind Baker Mayfield on like you give Baker like a 2-3 year deal. It's like, oh, maybe you add Zach Wilson. I don't even know if Zach Wilson's good for a scenario like that. I think that a guy like Mac Jones would be better than that, just because I've seen more good from Mac Jones than I have from Zach Wilson. And I certainly don't think that the Bucs would bring in either a Mac Jones or a Zach Wilson to be the backup over a guy like Kyle Trask, who's been with the Bucs, Jason Light draft pick. I mean, at least Mac Jones had a good rookie year and a Pro Bowl rookie year, and he would be like, maybe you could bring that guy in. Jason Light has a history with New England. If you're really not sold on Kyle Trask and you're like, okay, we want somebody maybe after Baker from Jacksonville, then I would consider Mac Jones. I don't even think Zach Wilson would be on my radar, man. I really don't. But that's it. That's the Buccaneers' options at quarterback, folks. A lot of different guys. Really, it's slim pickings, guys. It's slim pickings. I would say this. Guys who I think would be starters and potential lateral, if not upgrades, over Baker. And I say this, Justin Fields, I think, would be up there. I don't know about Russ. I still would probably take Baker. I really do believe that. And Kirk Cousins. That's it. I mean, that's it. In terms of guys that you would get where you could have higher expectations than what would happen if Baker Mayfield didn't come back, Kirk, maybe Russ, although honestly it's like 50-50 for me, and Justin Fields, which even Justin Fields, I don't know. I just think he has great potential. But guys where it's just like, no, I think it's more backup types of situations. Sam Howell, Desmond Rivers, by the way, the Bucs would have to trade for either one of those guys. Jimmy G, you'd have to trade for him. Ryan Tannehill, I think, is a free agent. Josh Dobbs is a free agent. I think those guys are more backups in their career. Like, Ryan Tannehill could start for you for a year if you absolutely needed him to. I think you could say a very similar thing to Jimmy Garoppolo. That's if the Bucs are absolutely desperate. Similar thing with Josh Dobbs. That's another Baker's situation, but worse, in my opinion. Tyrod Taylor, I think he'd be the backup behind Trask in that situation. And then Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, if you really, really don't have much going on, maybe you could sign Zach Wilson and say, okay, what the heck? Maybe Dave Canales could fix him, which if Dave Canales could fix Zach Wilson, heck, he should be the president of the United States of America. And then in the case of Mac Jones, I think he has more potential than Zach Wilson. He could be a starter, but man, I just could not see some high expectations there. Also, real quick, just want to talk about this, just kind of go over Spot Track, just so we can get the last few people in there. Jacoby Brissett's in there. He'd be an interesting name. I would put him in a similar boat to not even a Russell Wilson, but a similar boat to maybe like a Ryan Tannehill. I think he'd be like a better version of Ryan Tannehill. I think he could start for you, but expectations wouldn't necessarily be the highest. You gotta have a lot of other random names in there, like Marcus Mariota, meh, Sam Darnold, meh, Jameis Winston, lol. Drew Lock, which could be interesting. I mean, he may just come to the Bucs anyway as a third quarterback because he has experience with Dave Canales. So Pete Carroll ain't in Seattle anymore. Maybe the Bucs bring in Drew Lock to be a third quarterback. I don't know. Pay attention to that one. We may make a video about that. Gardner Minshew, meh. Teddy Bridgewater's retiring. Joe Flacco, he's 39. He had a great playoff run, but, brother, he ain't starting games for you. Let's just be honest. Blaine Gabbert, Josh Johnson are funsies. At Carson Wentz, I don't know, man. Like, it's slim pickings in the quarterback room this year. It really, really is. If the Bucs aren't able to bring back Baker Mayfield, I think they would be interested in Cousins. I think they would maybe be interested in getting a guy like Jacoby Brissett. They may even be interested. I think they'd be heavily interested in just saying, whatever, Trask is going to be the starter. We ball. And then John Wolford's the backup, and maybe you bring in Drew Lock. But, it's just a situation that, by the way, Baker Mayfield's current market value, $27.1 million. I would pay him that right away and not even really think about that. But, yeah. It's just slim pickings, folks. It's slim pickings. But we've kind of gone over all the options. Hopefully you guys have gotten a better idea of what the landscape is. And I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions about this. What do you think about this? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. I would love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. Where do you want to see the Buccaneers go in the quarterback direction? Again, I think Baker Mayfield's going to be back. I just wanted to go over all the options. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed. I'll see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.